All right. Are you pumped? Are you jazzed
Oh,
yet?
I couldn't help but get into the music a little bit.
Zzzt, 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 zzzt.
Yeah.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. What's up, interwebs? What's up, Restoration Nation? Andy McCabe here, Chris Nordike over there. This is the weekly Restoration Owners office hours. We're gonna come up with a better name for it, but that's just
Yeah,
office
maybe so.
hours. That's
Yep.
where we just hold space. And if you got some questions, concerns, some problems, restoration related, that you'd like us to help you solve, that's why we're here. Otherwise, we're going to talk amongst ourselves until we get our first victim. How about that?
Love
Chris,
it.
what is
Love it.
new in your world? What's happening with Floodlight? You just told me that you guys are looking to add consultants, which means you're expanding. That's good news. What's up?
Yeah, we're growing. We've been working with a strategic partner on a tech stack, a new tech stack for our consulting process. A lot of people are familiar with EOS,
Okay.
Entrepreneur's
I'm
Operating
not.
System.
What is that?
Book Traction, by Dino. And
Okay.
we so some people have used 90.io as kind of their interface that they sell, and we think we've created something that is even better than that, and really more optimized for our consulting
Okay.
work with our clients. And so we're really excited about that. It's going to be both customer facing and also consultant facing. So it's going to keep track of all of the roadmaps that we build for clients, and accountability and tasking, and so it's really going to be a single place where our consultants can keep track of our work with clients, and clients can keep track of the work with us. And it's we're really excited about it. So that's going to really change the game. And so far in the previews that we've done with clients are fired up. So that's always good. And then we rolled out recently our health and value assessment, and people can check it out, floodlight.propelyourbusiness.com. It is awesome. So all of this stuff has been
I'm going to type that here.
Yeah,
Floodlight dot
propel your business.
PROPELL.
No, just one L. propelyourbusiness.com.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
well,
and so
that's going out there.
Yeah, so that's been really exciting. We've gotten great feedback. We've been rolling that out to all of our existing clients, and what's awesome about that is it's based on data and research. It's not just some Mickey Mouse thing that we put together, but it's it provides our clients and anybody who goes to that and completes the assessment. It kind of gives them a snapshot in time of exactly where their business is at, both in terms of enterprise.
An exit assessment tool. So this is folks that are looking to sell their business or looking to pass it on to their next generation or whatnot, something like that.
Well, it's really, so we talk a lot with our clients about building an exit ready business. Right. That an exit ready business is a healthy business. Right. And so, exits are kind of on everybody's mind if they're in the industry right now, to some, whether they're thinking in 10 years, I want to build it and then in 10 years sell, or certainly there are some watching this maybe even that have a family company and they want to retire and they want to transition to their kids. And it's like, well, how do you do that? Well, if you want to maximize the value of your business, well, you have a broker, you have an attorney help you with that transaction. But in any case, you want to know, what's my business worth, And so this assessment, not only does it spit out your current enterprise value, but it also assigns you a health score. And then assigns a health score for all the 6 primary areas of your business as well. So you may be really healthy in one area of your business, but there's another area that you're really deficient. And so it's just a really useful tool that we primarily, developed as a way of tracking progress, a concrete measurement of where did our clients start, and then as we've been working with them, where are the areas of concrete improvement? And so it's it's now become something that we're offering publicly at no cost. So anyway, we're pretty stoked about that.
Now, you're not the only one to have a valuation tool out there right now. I saw.
Dear Lord, it's like, oh my gosh, right as we were getting to the launching pad with that, it's like everybody's talking about their assessment tool and take this for free and this or that. So yeah. You know, I think people should go out and complete every assessment tool they see.
Every single one, yes.
And then you be the judge of which one you think is the most useful. But we think pretty highly of ours. We're pretty excited about it.
Well, you guys, you have to. I'm going to not name names, but I do know of one out there that's being pushed by someone we both know and a lot of people know. But their whole thing is they're in the M&A space. They want to use this tool so they can then, try to talk to them about, you want to sell? Well, let's go with our group for the M&A piece of it. That is not what you guys are doing. You're doing it to help the owner. You're doing it for their purposes. Yeah.
Yeah, different. Yeah. So I think we're talking about Jeff Moore, and ATI developed their own evaluation tool, and it's great. Yeah, you and I both checked it out, and it's a great little tool. And I think what people will find, so ours really is designed to be more of an analysis of, similar purposes, but for us, the health score component is, I think really makes it maybe a more robust tool for owners who are looking to grow and expand their business with a future exit in mind, right? For somebody who's like, just, hey, I want to sell my business. I think a tool like Jeff's, the one that ATI created, and there's some other ones out there that can give you a really kind of rough idea of what is my business worth, what kind of multiple might I expect if I go to market right now. I think that can be really useful. I think it's a fairly light commitment too. I think it's 5 or 10 minutes, and it can punch in a few numbers, and it gives you a pretty good idea of that. Ours takes about 15 or 20 minutes to complete. Yeah. And it gets into what kinds of core systems and processes do you have in place in your business? What does your sales organization look like currently? What is the leadership structure, the involvement of the owner? It gets into a lot of some of those health metrics in order to.
You're building a mirror, it sounds like.
That's the goal. Yeah, that's the goal. Yeah. So you be prepared. Check it out.
You might not want to see what you're seeing in the mirror, but it's healthy. Like, you need to know where you stand as a business owner, as a business period, and bringing these things. I can see how this is a huge tool for you guys to at least just get started. Where do we start? Maybe you're healthy over here, but you're deficient over here. Then that's where we focus, right? That's where you start your consulting stuff.
Yeah. It's I think what's so interesting about it is, like I just got an assessment back from one of our clients, and they were super low in some areas and super high in terms of their health score. So one of their health score for the leadership area, which evaluates several different components, was really high, and their execution in their sales function really, really low. And so I think it can be incredibly revealing for some owners. And this actually caught them by surprise a little bit. They actually thought they had some traction in their sales. And when we dug into why was that score so low, it made perfect sense. And there were some aspects of their sales organization that they just weren't paying attention to. One of them being sort of reporting and key KPIs. They'd started to build out a really good sales team, but they really didn't have the systems and processes in place, and so we were able to zero right in on, okay, well, let's shore this up, right? This is actually a relatively simple fix,
Reporting in the sales organization is so hard, where it seems so hard. For me, I have never been one to adhere to organized structures very well. I'm an outside. I'm a free free spirit, if you will. So
Yeah.
when someone says you will use Salesforce, you will log every activity, and it just grates against me, but I understand why.
Yeah.
Um, when when you guys find an organization that needs marketing help, is there a
Mm,
platform that you recommend? Is it a
yeah.
Salesforce, or is it
I think,
Salesforce every time, or is it just depends?
yeah, boy, here's what I've seen. I've seen, I think now all of the CRMs, with maybe the exception of PSA. I haven't spent a lot of time under the
Okay.
hood of PSA, but
PSA is
um,
restoration specific, yeah?
yeah, well, yeah, I believe
Isn't it?
so. Yeah,
Okay.
I think it might be. Um, they tend to be very financially driven. They have a really great financial back end, is kind of what a lot of
Okay.
people go to PSA for, and it's great software. But I haven't spent a ton of time in the CRM component of it. But the so when we go, yeah, systems. The bottom line answer, in my view, is none of the job management platforms have a great CRM function. I
Mm,
think it's
no.
either they are so complex, and there's so much, uh, there's so much nuance to it. And I don't want to name names here because I know all the people sort of associated with
Sure.
these
Yes.
platforms.
Yes.
But what I have seen across sales teams, especially those that are heavily commercial focused, um, I I think the more simple, the better. The better
Mm,
the mobile interface,
mhm.
the more likely you're going to see compliance from your sales teams. Like it's you have these platforms and how they talk about their software and the functionality of it and how optimized it is for salespeople and so forth. But then you actually
Mm,
have the lived experience of salespeople and owners. And what I hear over and over and over again from all these platforms is, if they're too complicated, if there's too much nuance, it,
they don't get
uh,
used.
people aren't going to use it. And I think that's one of the biggest complaints that a lot of
Mm.
folks that are using Salesforce is that
God, it's a
it
monster. It's a
is
beast.
complicated. Yeah, it is. And so what I suggest to people is, regardless of what platform you have, um, ask yourself, okay, what is the information that we have to have? What is the purpose
Mm,
of documenting our sales activities? What are we
right.
trying to track over time? And then engineer the most simple system, and then build your requirements around that, right? And so,
Mm,
uh, my expectations with the salespeople that I work with are that we're tracking every interaction that we have with our clients. Um, but that really ought to be a simple note that documents the nature of the conversation and when it makes sense to follow up next. That's
mhm.
and that's it.
That's it. That's
And
it.
that's it. The out
You
and
don't
then when
need
we
to
have an
know what
actual,
campaign they're tied to and when that
yeah,
campaign started and stopped, and, that's what got me with Salesforce is I didn't know where to log my activity because there was 5 different places for it,
yeah,
and,
yeah,
it was just too big, too complicated, and that's where, the old pen and paper, man, it
yeah.
sometimes works, and it doesn't work at scale, but, man, you gotta start somewhere.
I routinely run into companies that have been taught a specific sales system,
Yeah.
and I often see a high level of activity and tracking and measurement, but
Mm.
often where lacking in results, you know?
Ah.
And I also tend to see a fairly high level of churn within those sales teams, because people either they refuse to adopt and comply with the
Mm.
system, and so they're sort of terminated out because they won't do the program, or people are working the program but we're not seeing the results we need, because while there's a volume of activity, right, the quality of the interactions, the actual behavior out in the field, and the conversations they're
Mm.
having with prospects, they lack confidence Okay, I know I need to
Yeah.
do so many one-on-ones. I know I need to do so many probing meetings. I know I need to do so many of these different activities to satisfy the program and my boss. But
Right.
when it comes to the actual interactions they're having, there's not as much priority given to, okay, what do we say when we're actually in front of a client? What kinds of questions do we ask them to actually move the relationship forward? And so it's a dance, right? It's like we do need to track stuff. I think a lot of salespeople are probably more oriented like you, where it's like they have a bias for action, they have a bias for interaction, and they struggle to consistently document. And it's kind of both and,
100%.
because you've obviously experienced the downside in your career of not documenting enough. All right.
Yes, I
If I
have.
had to guess,
Yes, I have.
I know I certainly have. But it's trying to find that Goldilocks middle, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's not about the tool though. It's not about the platform.
yeah,
It's whether the platform is helping you do your job or hurting you.
yeah,
And I'm gonna beat up on Micah right now. That is a terrible Dash used to be the same way.
mm,
Terrible interface
yeah,
that you put in the hands, the tool that you put in the hands of the mitigation guys, the techs, but it didn't help them do their job.
yeah,
It just was cumbersome. I could run circles around Micah using a pencil and paper. Really, I really could. And the same goes for your CRM or whatever sales tool you're using. Does it help your sales team, or is it just another
yeah,
time suck and activity for them to report meaningless
yeah,
data back to you? Um, so anyway,
yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, I
So
think
sales,
yeah, I think sales.
you're well, that's just one thing that you guys focus
Yeah.
on, and it just you said this particular company had a deficiency in their sales team, but a great leadership. What does great leadership look like?
Well, I think one of the main values when it comes to and leadership behaviors is creating clarity within your team.
Mm,
And one of the first places we start with companies is getting clear about their org chart, who does what, who's responsible for
oh,
what. And
okay.
most of the companies that we begin working with, there's some level of confusion, um, or multiple hat wearing, right? So, for example, there's multiple people
Mm,
doing the same things depending on the week, the day, the month, right?
mm.
And there's just uh, people don't own a particular lane. And so,
So if
just
it's everyone's job, it's no one's job.
that's exactly right. Yeah. And so there tends to be a lot of that. And I think it's all driven from like good intention of people saying, there is something healthy about a culture where no one says, well, that's not my job, right? Where they step in when needed and so
Mm,
forth. But I think one of the key jobs of a leader slash owner or GM is to step in and say, okay, we need to create some order here so that as we continue to grow, people down the line know exactly who they're responsible to and what
mm.
they're responsible for. Because at some point it breaks, right? When you've got a company with 4 or 5 employees, well, you're able to engage in enough frequency of conversation that you can kind of adapt and overcome your way through virtually
Right,
everything, right? If
right.
somebody can step in and say, "Hey, I'll handle this today," and we report back, that's done, right? And the flow of communication is pretty simple, but you start to get to 10, 11,
Mm,
12, 15, 25 employees, that does not work anymore. Um, and so that's one of the first things we typically have to step in and do. And the other part of that too is that owners often um, are still engaged in the doing, right? And
mm.
that's probably one of the biggest steps that most owners take at some point, whether that's when they hit 7 employees or 17 employees, is stepping out of the doing and learning to actually lead through other people. I know that was the biggest adjustment for me was even though we don't like to say it out loud or admit it, I think a lot of us really struggle thinking no one can do this particular thing as good as I can. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
whether
we don't want to take the chance. Well, yeah. And we don't want to take the chance of somebody creating a bad impression with the customer. They don't say it like we would say it, and so forth. And that's a really difficult hump for a lot of owners to get over. And it depends on, every owner's a little bit different. For some of them, it's getting into the actual trade work, or getting out of it rather, because they love working with their hands. They're a great craftsman. They understand the trade craft, and it's really, really hard for them to pull out of that because nobody else has the attention to detail or follows the process as closely as they do or whatever. Right. But it's pretty dang hard to get beyond a certain point. If as an owner or a GM, you're constantly getting into projects, you're
just capped. You're capping yourself and you're capping your organization.
Yeah, you are. Yeah,
you cannot scale yourself. There's just no two ways. When I started doing this claims delegates thing in let's see if we get Marvin in here. Marvin looks like he wants to get connected. About time. It only took us 21 minutes to get our first victim in the door here. We'll see. Looks like he's got some audio visual errors here. So when I started claims delegates, solopreneur, the typical E-Myth entrepreneur, like I was so good at writing Xactimate estimates. I can do this. I don't want to be an employee anymore. I can do this. And it took me 3 years. Now 2 years, 2 really long years before I hired my first other estimator. And once I did, I was like, holy shit, why didn't I do this sooner? Because all of a sudden, overnight, I doubled my revenue. Yeah, my costs went up, but my revenue doubled. And then I quickly realized that I add one more, and that's triple the revenue I was able to do myself. Add one more, that's 4x the revenue I was able to do myself. And then I was able to concentrate on what it turns out I'm really good at is actually freaking marketing, getting clients in the door. Yeah. And then it got to the point where that's all I was doing. And it was a great place. And then shit goes wrong, and I'm back to square one now in 2024, starting with just me. But very quick, my first move once I broke free here recently of my last venture, my first move was to locate that first estimator, because I don't want to drag myself back into ops, because I know that's a limiting factor. I can't do it all. So yeah, that's a good lesson for, hey Marvin, I'm just going to click on this. No, I can't. Marvin, try going out and coming back in again. Yeah, I'm gonna get a bad connection there. Yeah, great for all you solopreneurs out there, all you new business owners that are still in the field. The sooner you can get out of the field, the better. And the sooner you let your crews, let your people do their jobs without you interfering, the better. Right? Because you might say this is your job, but then if you're constantly behind them or over their shoulder while they're doing their job, it's not really their job, is it? How often do you see that, Chris?
Oh, I mean, everywhere, all the time.
Everywhere.
I think it's just it's human instinct, and I think even more so for those of us who are wired as driver, innovator, achiever folks. Like it's. There's a control element, I think, that probably all of us with that profile bring, Huge. And so I think that's it. And here's another thing that we don't talk about a lot, but I think it's real. And one of the reasons why I think often owners and senior leaders will be afraid to let people do their job and go out and make mistakes, and actually why they tend to micromanage and or get right in the trench and do for them, right? Or step in and do and pick up the slack and so forth, is, and we don't like to admit this, is that we're trying to hire people on the cheap. Whereas if we prioritize hiring the profile of person that the business needs to get the business to where we want to go, we're probably going to end up paying a more premium level compensation, but we're going to get somebody who checks the boxes of what we're actually looking for, that we're actually going to be confident in representing us in the business, and also confident that they can fill the role we're asking them to fill. Oftentimes we find people that fit our budget or the amount we want to pay, and then we figure, well, I can make do with their skill level or talent or personality, rather than instead finding the optimal persona to maximize the role that we're filling. And I've been guilty of this many times, man. It's like, this is not the first business I've owned, and like you, and I have made the mistake of, well, I'm ready to hire somebody, but I can only afford fill in the blank, 40,000 for this role. And so then you're cajoling somebody to take the role at this lower compensation. You're selling the vision and so forth. And you end up with a $40,000 person, right?
Yeah.
Or is at that stage of their career, not necessarily a lower quality individual, but somebody who doesn't have the chops. They don't yet have the juice to perform at the level that you want or need them to.
Right.
Whereas you probably should have taken the bold step or taken the risk of paying that for a $70,000 or $80,000 person. And it might have been scary, but the chances are high that you would have gotten a better result, and they likely would have paid for themselves in the process, but we were too afraid to stick our neck out and take
early
the risk.
on. You need to, and I think younger guys or guys and girls are more guilty of this than I think older seasoned guys, but maybe not. You need to understand that you are motivated in a very different way as the owner of a business than an employee is motivated.
Oh yeah.
And if you are, let's take an early stage. If you're pulling down 100 and you're solopreneur, you're pulling down 150, 175 a year, which is great. You're net 175. You need to understand that your first few hires, you're probably going to have to take less home in order to properly motivate them. So you can't, I think you just said it better than I could. You can't hire an $85,000 a year estimator for $45,000 a year. Right. You just can't. And so you're going to have to give something up as the owner. One of the things you're giving up is control, right? The other thing you're going to give up is a little bit of that take home. Your net's going to actually go down, and then it's going to go up. If you get the right person, they're going to be a force multiplier for your business. It's not a 1 + 1 = 2 deal. It's much more than that.
Or at the very least, right, in that scenario you describe, it means that for a period of time, you may not give yourself a raise as an owner as you expand. And I think even that is a discipline that a lot of owners overlook. It's like, oh my gosh, now I can afford the boat. Oh my gosh, now I can I can draw X amount off the business. All the while, as they face hiring new roles, trying to hire those roles on the cheap so that they can protect their own lifestyle and the toys and things that they want to buy. And I realize I'm oversimplifying here, and we're kind of whatever, but that is a really, really key thing that I see, a mistake that I see a lot of owners make is to hire on the cheap, to try to hire a bargain. And then we're frustrated. Or to hire, here's another thing too that we see a lot is hiring family members because we can get them on the cheap.
Yeah, because some of them work for free for a little bit.
Well, and you know what? Like I have a client right now that's struggling with this right now because they hired a family member into an important role, and the family member is not performing the way they need to. They probably were able to pay them under market. And so there was some advantage there, some perceived advantage there, but they're not getting the performance out of them that they want. And now there's the double awkwardness, right? Of not only do they have a team member that's underperforming that they're going to have to coach out, but it's a family member. And so you have the added relational tension of having to navigate that separation. And it's really hard. And I'm not saying don't work with family members, but I am saying hire the best person for the role. If that happens to be a family member, all the better. There's probably some level of built-in trust there that you benefit from. But do not hire people because they're cheap. If you can't afford to hire the best, it's probably best that either you continue to fill that role. In particular with the sales is one that's just always top of mind for me. When people think that they want to grow, they're like, well, I'll just need to hire a real go-getter salesperson. And then they'll find whoever's willing to work for $45K. and then they're pissed off because, well, we tried hiring a sales guy or gal and it just didn't work. And it's like, well, because
I know that mentality, and I've actually heard it come out of my friend's mouth. I have a friend who runs he's run several businesses now in Portland, but he's the exact same way. He wants to find somebody because he can afford $40,000 a year. But the upside, you could make another 50 if you hit these numbers. But he doesn't so he really wants a $90,000 a year salesperson. But but a $40,000 a year person is not a $90,000 a year person. So you put somebody, even if the incentive structure is there, they're not going to be able to execute like somebody who has the chops, who has the experience, who has the pedigree or whatever else. You need to pay for that up front. And these commission only, like whoever thought of this commission only position is really the only people you get for a commission only or heavily commission laden comp structure is people who are desperate. Because a salesperson that understands what their worth is not going to take a commission only or heavy commission comp structure. They're just not. They're smarter than that.
Well, I have seen it. There are a handful in our industry that are like, hey, screw your base salary. I want 10% of everything I bring in, because they know their network, they know what they've produced in the past, and they know they're going to make a lot more money. And they know they can negotiate that way, that most owners are like, hey, what do I got to lose?
Right. It's new money to me.
They eat what they kill, and it's like 10%'s a lot, but they know they can manage it in their P&L. Like if they sell, they're like, meh, okay, I'm willing to do that, especially since I have no overhead if they're not bringing in work. So you get those types, those very high level long-term sales reps in our business, or ones that are coming from a very successful career in other service verticals that know what they can do and they have a lot of confidence. But more than likely, you're going to end up with people that have no other options, and you're going to get that kind of result from most of them. I have a client who I was just talking with recently about this, and they have a sales rep they've been struggling with, and we were having a check-in. I was asking about the situation, and they said, well, I'm kind of fed up. Next thing is I'm going to move them to commission only. And I said,
Lord.
No, you can't do that. I said, because
demotivating them.
You jettison the payroll costs. I said, but unfortunately what you're going to do is you're going to incentivize the wrong behavior. Here you've got somebody who's been struggling to bring in revenue, and now you're going to say, oh, by the way, now you only get paid if you bring in revenue. Well, what kinds of conversations and what kind of sales tactics is that
short term?
likely?
Yep.
Short-term behavior, short-term thinking, right? And of course,
Yep.
that's the furthest thing from what we want to be promoting and incentivizing, right? So, yeah, there's so much here, and at the same time, I know you and I both can relate to owners. Like, I understand the temptation to try to get the bargain and try to hire somebody at this great rate. Like there's almost some pride in it. Like, oh man, I got this super awesome person and they're young and it's only going to cost me X. And it almost never works out the way we hope, unless there's one exception to this. Okay. There's one exception.
What's that?
If you as the owner or the GM or whatever role or leadership role you're in, if you are willing to pour yourself into that person and mentor them, there is one of my mentors that I worked with, Jim Kuhlman. Jim Kuhlman's a very, very successful State Farm agent, a top 100 guy in the country. And I had the benefit of working with him. And my first couple years that I worked with him before becoming an agent myself, he did not pay me much. Right. And, but I knew my office was going to be right next to his. I knew he was going to give me full access. I knew he was going to take me to lunch and we'd debrief after my sales meetings. I knew he would show me the business and pull back the curtain and help me understand what it was like to own a State Farm agency. There was all of these pluses on top of, gosh, I think I had a $2,500 base when I first started with Jim. And and he was unapologetic about it. This was his model. But the difference was he gave himself to what he referred to as his agent interns, and he delivered on every aspect of that mentoring that he promised. But the sad reality is most owners that are trying to get a bargain, they sell this vision, they sell their comp plan, and it's like, hey, I'm only paying you a $40,000 base, but someday, and all this kind of stuff. And I've been guilty of that too. And I've just found that it's rare that people will put the amount of intention and the effort into delivering on that promise. Most of the time we get a bargain and then we get busy with other things and we just throw them out to the wind and, hey, you make it happen. Right. And often they don't. Right. And they don't feel supported. And, so I think if you're one of those owners,
put the time in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it takes a lot of effort.
How else is a human being supposed to grow into a role anyway? Well, you have to mentor. You have to have a system in place.
Everybody thrives under mentoring. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. I think some of us are more capable of sort of being self-taught and figuring it out as we go. And of course, all of us are looking for employees like that. But the reality is most people don't thrive in that environment. There's a reason why some of us become business owners, because we're willing and able to do that to some degree or another. But
slightly insane.
A little bit. Risk takers,
risk takers. Yeah. I am so extreme on that end. If I'm not taking a risk, if there's not risk involved, it's kind of unsexy to me. It's I feel like I always want to be. Yes, Abby. Hey, Abby, good to hear from you. Abby says 99% insane. Yes. Because there's the insane risk takers. And then there's everyone else. And guess what? The majority of the world is everyone else. Everyone else really just wants to know that they have a job and they can do good work and they can be valued and someone's going to teach them something.
Yep.
Those are so easy. It's so easy, but so many owners and managers get it wrong. um, they don't understand that you have to water your people with mentorship and with advice and feedback and all these other things, because people just grow into the perfect employee. People are
Yeah.
mentored into being the
Yeah.
perfect employee.
Yeah. Well, it's
And
true.
it requires ownership. And even if I'm going to go so far as say, even if you're way overpaying, you still need to mentor that person,
Yeah.
because if you don't, you're a couple years or a year later, you're going to be like, man, I paid a lot of money, and this person isn't growing or isn't doing what I was hoping they would do. Well, it's not about hoping; it's about how did you plant the
Yeah.
seeds and how did you put the framework in place for this person's success.
Yeah.
And the owner
Yeah.
needs to take responsibility for the success of everyone else in their org underneath
Yeah.
them. And when they
Yeah.
don't, things
Yeah.
fall apart.
Yeah. The idea of a turnkey employee, all of us have hired what we thought was turnkey.
Was the
Ah,
turnkey.
just
Mhm.
throw them in. Just they're ready to go. They've done this, and this in the past, and
Oh, have you
and
seen their resume? God,
oh
they're
my gosh,
amazing.
right? And somehow they also happen to be, 70 to 80. They only needed 70 to 80,000 bucks or whatever, right? But the reality is, like, I have seen there are turnkey employees,
Hmm.
but they tend to be very high dollar hires, right?
Yeah.
Because they are so incredibly valuable. They know what they're worth. They know what they're bringing, and they've proven it. You're right, and so they tend to be very, very costly hires. And yet, oftentimes, we apply that whole turnkey thing to technicians and PMs and folks that
Oh
um,
man. How
so it's
many
it's
how
funny the
many
mistakes we
lead
make, huh?
techs have made it through the rounds of 20, 15 to 20 different restoration companies, and every company that hires them, like, oh well, he's been in the industry for 15 years. He's been here and he's been here. Oh, he's got all these certifications. Oh man, I just got to hire him and he can run everything
Yeah. Yeah.
without
It's
really asking, hey, can you run everything?
it's such a common error. Yeah, it's such a
It's so
common error.
huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh boy, we're all the same, aren't we? I mean, all the
Yes, we are.
mistakes we make, it's just so universal. And yeah, so I had a topic for us if we want to dive into
Oh,
it. Shift gears
all
a
right.
little
Well,
bit.
I got about 15 minutes left in our allotted time. So yeah, let's do it.
What happened to our guest? We had somebody in here,
He
didn't
never
we?
came back. He never popped up again. He
Son of a
came from
gun.
YouTube. Marvin came
Son
from
of a gun.
YouTube and he never came back.
I wanted to I want to give an example of something that I think is a big gap. We opened up when we were talking about sales CRMs, and so it was just coincidental. Before we got started, I was thinking about customer onboarding, and I think it relates really well to CRMs and how do we utilize them and so forth. And customer onboarding is one of those things that I've heard people talking about more recently in different Facebook groups and forums,
Okay.
and I'm sure it's even come up here from time to time. But a lot of times when I hear about customer onboarding, we're talking about sort of that initial customer response and the expectation setting that we're doing with a
Mm,
Mr. and Mrs. Jones with regard to a lot of times I
okay.
hear it with regard to um, TPAs and carriers
Mm,
and our role and who our customer is, and explaining the role of us as the restoration company and the role of the adjuster and so forth to clients. I tend to hear about customer onboarding from that angle, right? Of setting
mm.
proper expectations with our homeowner client, et cetera, on the front end. And all of that's true. But I'm going to talk about it from a little bit different angle and
Okay.
with respect to commercial customers.
Okay.
Um, I
Well,
think
let me first off, my
yeah,
understanding of onboarding, what you just talked about, I consider that just part of the sale process. That's still
well,
sales.
I would
It's
agree.
not really onboarding. Okay. Yeah.
I would agree with you, but I've heard people sort of reference it in that respect, and
Okay.
and while I agree with that, I'm gonna hit on more the commercial client, right? Multifamily, senior living, hotels, municipality, schools, etc. I think most companies are neglecting that onboarding process, and there's a lot of not only missed opportunity, but there's a lot of pain and suffering that follows by not having an onboarding process that your salespeople are required to do with new clients. I think there's some really simple behaviors that we can deploy with every single new customer on board that'll not only really help our PM, our production teams, and our admin teams subsequently with the customer interactions and the billing and the collection and all of that stuff. But it will also help build more of a connection and a collaboration between our sales team and our operations teams, because it's a huge problem in the industry that there tends to be, this adversarial relationship that crops up or is just sort of always existing between salespeople and the technicians and the PMs and the operations side of the business. And if that's not true in your business, whoever's watching this, that's awesome. Then you're way ahead of the curve. Because in most companies we see, there's at least some kind of adversarial energy, that the technicians and the PMs and the estimators often, to one degree or another, see the salespeople as just going out and golfing and boozing and schmoozing and just eating and expense reporting and having fun, networking, right?
Yep.
And the salespeople often feel routinely let down by operations partners because the salespeople are often the first people to get called when a customer is upset, angry, disappointed, or feels like there's been bad follow through on the part of the operations team.
Because ops has to cash the check that sales has written.
You're absolutely right. And certainly salespeople are often guilty of overpromising and setting up the operations team for failure. And so it goes both ways, and both parties are guilty. Guilty is charged.
Yes.
And so the question is, and this is just one of the key things that we're always working on with our clients and helping them develop more clarity around and more connection between these two parts of the company. And of course, obviously admin in the middle, the job file coordinators, the AR and collections team, et cetera, also have a role in the sales process as well. But a simple onboarding process that connects all the parties is a really powerful way to affect that and to grow more synergy between the various parts of our company. So let me describe a really simple onboarding process. Okay.
I'm ready.
When a sales rep sells an account, and when I say sell an account, there's really three triggers for that. One, they get their first job. Okay. They get their first job from a client. Or they get on a vendor list is another way to trigger this. That necessitates them setting that client up in the job management system and building out their customer profile. Okay. The second thing that sort of triggers this is that they sign an MSA, a master services agreement with the client. Okay. That triggers an onboarding process. And finally, they do an emergency readiness plan or an ERP of some kind for that client. So in those 3 or 4 scenarios, those are all triggers for us to conduct an onboarding. The very first step in the onboarding is building out that customer profile. And we use the 4 C's. This is the information that we want in every single customer profile, the 4 C's. The first C is for contacts, cell contacts. I want a minimum of 3 cell phone contacts for that customer profile. Now, if I manage to sign an MSA or write an ERP for a portfolio of properties, I'm going to have several customer profiles in most job management softwares, including Dash that I've seen. There's a hierarchy, there's a tiered structure
There's
of
a
data,
parent,
right?
and then child. Yes.
Exactly. So, right, you have the parent company, the property management company, and then you have the individual locations all have their own separate profile and contacts within,
Yep.
right? And our rule of thumb is I want to have 3 cell phone contacts for every profile. I think a lot of times sales reps, we neglect the fact that we'll set up a profile for home office where often it holds the AP that they get paid out of the corporate office for that property management company when we do jobs. And we've got a single 1-800 number, or phone number. And so the AR team is trying to hunt and find the right connection to get paid, right? And so we want to have 3 cell phone contacts ideally for each profile that we set up in the system. This is especially important or equally important at the local property levels as well. And in fact, that's where we learned to collect these 3 cell phone contacts, because when our team is responding in particular to an after hours loss, it is not uncommon for the person who called in the job at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning, it's not uncommon for that person to be a different individual than the person who will actually be there when our technicians respond to the job and go to that affected area. And or it's not uncommon for the person who called in to just simply turn their phone back off and go back to sleep, because now it's the maintenance manager's problem.
It's somebody else's issue.
But we don't have the maintenance manager's cell phone number. And so then our technicians arrive, they're sitting in the parking lot, may have been given bad information. Hey, it's apartment number D228 when it should have been E228 or C228, right? It just sounds different on the phone. 3 cell phone contacts. The next C is context. And this is where we start to build and develop relationship and understanding across our team as to the value of these accounts. And what does this account mean, right? There is a fundamental difference between a mom and pop family-based group of 6 or 7 8-plexes. That's one kind of property management company versus a division or a portfolio of Greystar properties that has 2,500 doors and 14 complexes. Those are 2 fundamentally different customers that we may want to handle differently and prioritize our dispatch accordingly. But unless we educate our team, our admin teams, our production teams about these incoming accounts, they may or may not know or understand how to prioritize those accounts. And so, like, for example, in Dash and certain job management systems, there are fields in the profile, or in some cases ways to pin a note at the top of the notes where we can put this information. So in context, I would want that sales rep to put a note in to say, hey, this new account, this property management company has 2,500 total doors in our market area that they manage, which includes 12 apartment complexes, and they have 2 more under development, right? Another thing for context that I might add is, hey, this is a property management group that this past year had an average of 4 losses per month, right? All of that helps give context to the size of the account, the size of the opportunity, et cetera. And it doesn't need to be elaborate. It's usually a couple sentences.
Is it all in relationship to how important or how potentially important this client is to our organization?
Yes. Yes, 100%.
That's what it's about.
That's what it's about. And I want
people need to understand. The whole team needs to understand, as what you're saying.
Absolutely. And most of us fail at this with every single new commercial account we bring on. Very few companies do this. So context. I want to give context, and we're going to come full circle to this in a moment with a second layer of onboarding. But the third C is the competitor. Who did we take this business from? 9 times out of 10, 95 times out of 100, we took this account from somebody. They'd previously been
Yes.
serviced. They may not have had a contract. They may not have had a national account with a prior vendor, but they had somebody they were previously using. And so for us to get this client, they had to stop using somebody else, right? Or stop using somebody else
Mhm.
as much. And that's another thing we all know
Mhm.
is that just because we have a client doesn't mean they're using us for everything. And often they're not, right?
Does
So,
not.
but they had to stop using somebody as much or at all in order for us to get this business. Who was the competitor we got this from?
Mm.
It's useful for us
Who
to
was
know
it?
that and over time to see trends. Wow, we're getting a lot of so-and-so's clients, right? And allows us to investigate and be like, okay, why? Why are we getting these clients? But I think it's just helpful to know where we're gaining ground in the market and also for our team to understand where this business is coming from.
Mm.
And then the last C is the compelling reason. Why did we get this business from? You fill in the blank. Why did we get this
Compelling
business? And this is really, really important. The compelling reason. What was the compelling reason that this company, this property management company, this senior living group, this hotel is switching to us away from the last restoration company they used?
Why
This
are
is
they
really, really
switching?
important, right? So was
All right,
it
hold on
uh,
1 second. We're gonna
yeah.
get Mr. Weatherman in under
Ooh.
the wire.
Hey.
Here he
Oh,
is.
boys, how we doing?
What's
up,
going
man?
on, Doug?
How we doing, boys? How
Uh,
we doing?
so Chris, I want you to finish your thought here. We got the 3 C's or 4 C's. There's 4 there. I can count. All right, wrap it up. Compelling reason.
Yeah, the compelling reason. When we onboard a client, we need to communicate to the whole team, who'd we get this from and why did we get it, right?
Mm.
So after we've set up the customer profile, then we do what was called the road show. And this is such a powerful practice, guys. The road show. And I can't remember, Dougie, if we talked about this at Large Loss Mastery when we did our thing. But the road show is where the sales rep, after they set up that new commercial client in the system, then they reach out to each department head, mitigation manager, the administrative manager, and the recon manager. They text them and say, hey, I have a brand new client I'm onboarding. I need time. In the case of the mitigation, I need time at one of your morning stand twos this next week. I'll need 5 minutes. That's it. What day would you like me to come? What's most convenient? They do the same thing for their administrative manager. Hey, I need to come talk to the job file coordinators, your AR team. I got to tell you guys about a new commercial client. It's 5 minutes, right? Jump in on their meeting. And then lastly with recon, hey, I need 5 minutes at the top of your production meeting, right? To tell the team about a new, and then essentially in person, they go through the 4 C's. Let me tell you about this new client. Here's the main contacts. Obviously, people don't need to hear the phone numbers, but here are the main kind of critical contacts for the account. Here's the context. Guys, this is our biggest property management company yet. And this is really the opportunity for the salesperson to sell the team. And what this starts to do is it starts to let the team know, the broader production team and admin teams and mitigation teams, it lets them know, well, holy shit. This sales rep, they aren't just out hobnobbing and lunching people. And they're putting bacon on the table. They're feeding the team, right? It's really important. They may all sort of indirectly know that. At the end of the day, they know, okay, this business is coming from somewhere. But when we implement this roadshow, they start to develop a real connection to the salespeople and gratitude for them. Because it's different. It's just like it's different when you talk to somebody on Zoom versus meet them in person. It's the same kind of thing when the sales rep shows up to the next production meeting or mitigation stand to in the morning and talks about a new client that we're likely going to start seeing business from. Okay. So they give them the context. And I always coach my sales reps. I'm like, man, I want the rah-rah. I want you to brag about how big ass of an account this is. Right.
Yeah.
And then they also tell them what competitor they took it from. And I always encourage people, it's okay to celebrate, because the last reason is why we got it from them. But here's the thing I always coach salespeople to tell their operations partners is I tell them, look, that last piece, the compelling reason, it's so important for that sales rep to convey, what promise did I make?
Yes.
Because in order for us to take business, there's a reason why we got the business, because the other company was shit with their communication most often. Right? Or there was a quality issue. There was unprofessional technicians, right? Having inappropriate conversations on job sites, whatever it is, right? There was a compelling reason. And we are just as much at risk of losing the business.
Yep.
If
for that same reason.
And this happens all the time. Is that as salespeople, we fail to communicate. And frankly, leadership and operations fails to even ask the question. But there is a compelling reason that got that customer in. And I think if we're selling well, the sales rep sold our systems, processes, or standards that solved for that pain point that they were experiencing with this other company. So they made a promise. They said, okay, well, if it was frequency of communication, we never knew what the hell was going on. Well, then the sales rep is likely selling our 24-hour job update standard. Well, if the team fails to perform to the 24-hour job update standard, we are likely to lose the business just like XYZ Restoration did.
Just as quickly.
Right. Just so that onboarding process really helps build relationship across the team and create awareness across the team about what sales is doing, how we're getting the business, and ultimately how we could lose the business if we don't perform.
So it's not okay. So that's not how I would understand onboarding. That's not how I would think of I think onboarding is outward facing, but this is onboarding a client to our team.
Yeah,
I love it. Yep. All right,
yep.
We're over time, but Doug's here. So, Mr. Dougie,
I got in late.
How's that big fire going?
Oh, geez, man, it's big. They're supposed to release protocol and stuff tomorrow.
Nice.
It's big though. It's probably a little bit bigger than the number I gave you when we talked. What was that, Friday?
Really? What's your? We're not going to name names or give any details, but what's your burn rate today?
4 and change.
Good God.
And we haven't even gotten a protocol issued yet.
Wow. Good for you, man. Those are the claims you just like. Thank you. Thank you.
Pretty good size. It's important too, to Chris's point too. It's important to deliver when you get on these job sites, man. If we pulled up and didn't do one of the things that we promised them, then we automatically look like crap for the rest of the job. There's nothing you can do.
You've been gone the next day, and somebody else is making that 400 a day.
They've got this is a large scale business. They do a lot of business. They move a lot of the units that they sell. They have mechanics and everything else that have to keep a lot of these things going for the place to be as operational and profitable as it's always been. So their main goal is, of course, staying in business as much as possible while we're there doing what we have to do.
Well, because their business interruption is going to be bigger than your bill
per day. Yeah. If we stop the show in this place for a week, it's way bigger than our bill, 100%. And I mean, you have to every single thing. So we promised them we'd get their mechanics back. We promised them we'd get their title clerk ladies' offices back as soon as we could. You know what I mean? So you have to come through on those things, and you have to come through hard, because the second that you don't, the rest of the faith of all the stuff you're trying to build up, and it's pre-sale, in the sale. I mean, it can be during the project. You know what I mean? However it works.
Big time.
For us, this was onboarding a completely new client as well as taking on this super large loss from them. You know what I mean? So at the same, we have to learn them, they have to learn us, and there has to be a system in place where that's never going to fail, where what they want and what we're doing has to coincide the whole time, or else there can be interruption. That's the last thing that we want, So we got to promise, we got to hold through on what we're doing, because if you don't, or you skip out, then there's just nothing else that's there for you. Your faith is in their faith in you is going down by the second that you don't perform what you're saying.
Well, thank goodness you have all those trusty consultants to keep you on the straight and narrow.
There's so many of them now too. They're all here now, man. They're all
How many? 4, 5, 6?
5, 4 different companies, 2 for mitigation, 2 for rebuild, and then the hygienist, which is also 2 different hygienists.
Oh my goodness.
Well, you are well supervised.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be doing our P's and Q's on this one, brother. You know what I mean?
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
Well, you've got Mr. Nordyke and myself here. Is there a problem that we can help you solve today?
Man, I'll tell you what, you actually solved a problem for me Friday. I haven't encountered any other ones yet since then.
Nice.
But Chris and Brandon are a consistent source of solid information for this industry. And
yep.
I mean, you guys both know, but anybody else that might be watching this, I've been around a long time. It's not a short amount of days I've spent here. I've done it at all kinds of different levels. And so, I mean, I know all different facets and ways to do this, from large franchise all the way down to independent, company owner where I'm at now. The amount of information that these guys have and the consistency of good information is there more than a lot of other things. This industry needs more resources like this, because these are the things that are going to teach a lot of these guys what to do in these situations, how to run profitable organizations, what to command from your teams, and especially your marketing teams, salespeople, anybody that's out there with your brand on their back. You definitely have to make sure that they know that, and they know the gravity and the weight of that brand. And, it's important. But Chris and Brandon are nonstop. From the podcast, I've met these guys in person a couple of times now. I've heard them speak a few times across the place. I mean, they're a consistent source of solid information that's good for restorers, young, old, and in between. Guys that have been at it for a few years, guys that have been at it a lot of years, and they each have their own personal take. You know what I mean? Chris is the great marketing, the organization, the business, Brandon has so much operational knowledge that if you can't learn something from that guy, you're probably not in operations. You know what I mean? That's kind of, I mean, they just, it's a resource for the industry. Every time that these guys that I've talked to these guys or heard from these guys, even the podcasts that come out, it's always got something that's valuable for this industry in it.
So good.
It's something that we need more of. So if there's anybody else out there that's got the goods, man, you guys get a podcast and a microphone going. Let's get this baby going.
Let's make it happen.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, yeah, you guys, I mean, like when I met you guys at Tom's class, the first time we ever saw each other, shout out to Tom McGuire too, just in case he's watching. Can't say hi to Tom.
Lars Lost Mastery, baby.
But Tom has always been a strong mentor of mine, a guy I've had a lot of interactions with over the years. I even as an auditor from an insurance company before, that was the first time we ever met. You know what I mean? So Tom's a great guy. When he brings in people too, it's the same thing. He's bringing in somebody of substance that's going to make a big difference. But that was the first place we met. And their whole talk for that class, and there was a lot of the stuff from the marketing too, and the checks that you have to have in place for your marketers to make sure that the business that they're bringing in is actually doing something. So yeah, that's another very important part with this industry here. But the first time we ever met, I was impressed. I'd been listening to the Head, Heart, and Boots podcast I'm pretty sure since right after I first heard about it, which was very, very early. But yeah, it's always been one of the ones that I listen to. That one,
like 100 and
those are my podcasts.
150 episodes now, 160. What are you guys working on?
About 150 now. Yeah, it's been almost 3 years.
Nice.
And you can go back. I mean, that's the best thing about our modern day, right? That's all this stuff is cash. This entire knowledge base is cash for, all the way going back to the end of time. You guys can go back to episode 1 and learn. You can nonstop binge listen to this stuff. And if you get to 140, you're going to be a restoration genius if you can retain even 60% of that knowledge,
It's a master's degree. It's an online master's degree.
Exactly.
That, listen at your own pace.
Yeah, and training in this industry is important at every level. Doesn't matter if it's from the IICRC, from other consultants, from other businesses, from other peers. You know what I mean? You can learn a ton of stuff from other people in this industry, and that's a thing I think that a lot of folks need to take more advantage of, because that way we can all stay on the same mission.
That's right.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, man.
Speaking of learning things, we got a class coming up on Friday. Doug, I know you're signed up for it.
I might be watching it from my truck and talking in and out, you know what I mean? Giving orders on the
It'll be recorded.
You know what I mean? Doing that whole thing. But I'm going to be there, man, definitely, because
it'll be recorded.
The appraisal thing too, man, is another huge thing. You're 100% right when you say that if we could double the amount of appraisers in the country, it can have a huge effect.
It would change the game.
It would change the game. It would instantly change the entire way that the dynamic goes. And the other situation I was talking to you about on Friday, I saw your live video that you made after that too.
It's crazy.
That is nuts, right? That is nuts. And that's the only way for us to stop what insurance companies think all the bad things are, you know. Luckily, the carrier that we're working with now has worked with us before. I've worked with them even before this company ever existed. So, I mean, I've got a pretty good reputation, with these guys. So I'm pretty pumped that it was them ultimately that got this claim, that has this policy on the book, So, yeah, I mean,
we were talking about, just to refresh everybody, you're getting into appraisal because I told you to, and so you said, okay, I'm gonna do it. And you got into an appraisal that just is incredibly lopsided, where the restorer in that particular case was just off the reservation, just not anywhere near what would be reasonable, reasonable care.
It's price gouging. There's no, you can use the bad word. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's terrible. So, over 500K on what should have been less than 100K, really. But I was working on one this morning, and the restorer was sitting at about 75K, and Safeco thinks it's worth 35K. And I did my analysis, and they were, all in all, I found about $2,500, where I was like, yeah, really? And it was $2,500 worth of, like, it was containment. Like, we set up a containment. But I'm looking at the job going, okay, the whole entire downstairs, you ended up gutting to the studs, but you put up a containment in every room as you went. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to pay you for that. I'm not going to let you get, you're not going to get charged for that. You're not going to get to but all in all, so my opinion, going back to the opposing appraiser, is going to be, hey, I think they're owed, they're owed about 72 of this 75 that they billed for, but they've been waiting on that money since February. Yeah. So the other part of my appraisal is going to include the late fees on that money.
And cost incurred.
Because the cost incurred, they did the work. So it goes both ways, but I like the more time I spend on this side of it, the appraisal side of it, than in the trenches of it, it's a whole lot more enjoyable, because it's a whole lot less personal being involved in somebody else's claim than fighting for your own money. It's good.
Yeah, I've had good fun with it so far. I've been learning a lot of stuff, and it's been a while since I've actually been able to say I've taken on a whole new skill. You know what I mean? So this is really cool. I'm really looking forward to the class on Friday. I know there's going to be a ton of good information in there, and I mean that's you're not wrong, man. We can change the game and the entire industry focus, and especially the way restoration is looked at by insurance companies, by doubling up the amount of people that can say this is the right price tag.
It's the right price.
However you get to it, you know what I mean? However you can get to it, this is what it would have costed to do the thing. And then it makes everybody more honest. It's going to make the carriers more honest, and it's going to make us more honest, and then it makes us appear more trustworthy to them. Hopefully, over time
100%.
here, we can kind of close this rift that we've made for ourselves.
Hope so. All right. Well, better late than never. Thanks for coming, Doug.
Yeah,
Chris, you get the last word, my friend. What's going on? What do we have to look forward to next week?
Well, next week. I don't know. I always just base it on what's coming up in our consulting work from week to week. But I will say I'm getting ready to do a post in the group about a recruiting webinar that I'm doing tomorrow with Mitchell Riley. Mitchell Riley owns OPS Staffing. It is not going to just be a sales pitch for a staffing company, although Mitchell, we highly recommend him to all of our clients. But we're going to be talking about different recruiting strategies. You will learn how to best engage with a headhunter, how the costing works when you hire a staffing agency to recruit, say, a GM or a mitigation manager or an estimator or whatever. But we're going to teach you some strategies on how to mine talent from LinkedIn. Also how to use automation tools within LinkedIn for recruiting purposes.
Nice.
We're going to talk about.
Is that a broadcast webinar? Or is it just for the group? Just for the Rebel group?
Oh, it's open. It's public. Yeah.
It's okay. You got a link for me?
I'm gonna drop it on the
perfect
Rebels page. So I'll throw it in here, guys, and people can follow and register. But that's going to be great. And then if people want to just send you or I a direct message with any questions, topics for next week, that's awesome. Otherwise, I'll come with 2 or 3 like we did today.
And we keep telling ourselves we're going to do this. We will promote this before the day of for next week.
Yes, we will.
Yes, we will. I promise you. All right. Well, that's what we got for today. It's great to have you. Great to see you again, Chris. Great to see you, Dougie. Everyone out there that was watching, there was a couple folks. Next week, get in here. Ask your questions. We also have the Restoration Rebel Roundtable coming up on this Thursday. So if you're a member of the Restoration Rebels, you can get in on the action. And it's going to be a good time this Thursday. Thursday at 5:30 Pacific, and then the appraisal class is this Friday. It's not too late to sign up. Appraisalforcontractors.com. We're going to start at 9:30 Pacific and go as long as it takes. It should not take all day, but I'm going to allot the rest of the day to it. So, all right, guys, be good. Have a happy Monday.
Yep.
All right. See you later.